In some families, there's this silent war being fought. And it's not about the usual stuff, like inheritance or big, loud arguments. It's a war for reality itself. And in this battle, one person often gets cast as the villain, not for doing anything wrong, but for simply seeing and sometimes saying the truth. This is the story of the family scapegoat and their journey to get back what was stolen from them, their own sense of what's real. So let's dive into this hidden battle.
I mean, it is one of the most confusing feelings in the world, right? You see the dysfunction, you feel the tension, you notice all the things that just don't add up. But the second you react or even just let it show on your face, you're the problem. Suddenly you're too sensitive, you're being difficult, or you're twisting the truth. That feeling of being punished just for being clear-eyed, that's the first clue you might be fighting in a war you never even wanted to be in.
So what's really going on here? Well, at the very heart of this conflict is something called the shared fantasy. And look, this isn't just a simple disagreement. It's a full-blown collective delusion. It's this unspoken agreement within the family to warp reality, all to protect the incredibly fragile ego of a narcissistic or emotionally immature parent. And the scapegoat? They become a threat, not because they're trying to be, but because their connection to reality threatens to pop that fantasy bubble.
And this really shows you the fundamental clash. On one side, you've got the shared fantasy, this carefully protected bubble where the parent is always right and the family is perfectly fine. It's like what the psychoanalyst Sam Vaknin talks about, where the victim is forced to outsource their reality testing to the narcissist. But on the other side, you have the scapegoat's reality, which is just based on what's actually happening. They see the truth. And in a system that's built on a lie, well, the truth is the most dangerous thing there is.
Okay, so what is a family scapegoat exactly? The most important thing to get is that this is a role, not an identity. The term actually comes from the Bible, from this ritual where a goat was sent out into the wilderness, symbolically carrying away the sins of the community. Well, in a dysfunctional family, one person gets unconsciously picked for that same job. They become the container for all the family's shame and secrets, and that allows the whole system to pretend it's healthy. It was never, ever about who you are. It was about the job you were forced to do. So how does a system like this even keep itself running? It's all managed by a set of unspoken and often totally unconscious rules and roles. Think of them like the invisible scaffolding that keeps everyone in their place and keeps that shared fantasy from collapsing. Let's take a look at the two most common roles.
The scapegoat and the golden child, really, they're just two sides of the same narcissistic coin. The scapegoat is the bucket for everything bad, the truth teller, who's punished for what they see. The golden child, on the other hand, is put on a pedestal. They're the source of narcissistic supply, showered with praise for making the parent look good. But, and this is the big catch, the golden child's perfect status is completely conditional. It depends entirely on their performance and their obedience. At the end of the day, both roles are there to serve the parent, not the kids.
Researcher Rebecca Mandeville just nails it when she says, the system operates like a cult. I mean, think about it. It's got a leader, it's got its own sacred stories, the false family narrative, and it's got its heretics. That negative story about you, the scapegoat, it's not just some random, unfortunate thing. It's functional. It's actively benefiting the people in charge by keeping the system steady and their fragile egos intact. This image really gets to the heart of what it feels like on the inside. The child's own sense of self just gets all blurred and tangled up with the parents'. You don't just feel their unresolved pain and shame, you absorb it, you actually become it. The family therapist Murray Bowen had a name for this, the undifferentiated family ego mass. It's this messy space where you can't tell where you end and they begin. It's just a shared emotional swamp where the child is forced to carry the parent's emotional baggage. Okay, so we've covered the what and the why, but now let's get into the how. What are the actual psychological weapons they use to maintain this reality distortion field? The number one weapon in the arsenal is gaslighting. It's this systematic, insidious process designed to make you question your own mind. It works in stages. First, the parent just flat out denies a reality that you both know is true. Then, your perception itself gets attacked. You're told you're remembering it wrong, you're being dramatic. Next, you get labeled as the problem. You're crazy, you're unstable. And over time, the goal is achieved. You start to doubt your own sanity. And gaslighting rarely works alone. It's backed up by a whole arsenal of other tactics. You've got projection, which is when the parent takes all their own junk, their shame, their feelings of inadequacy, and just dumps it onto you. There's invalidation, that constant, grinding dismissal of your feelings and experiences. And when none of that works, You get manipulation and reactive rage, that sudden, terrifying explosion of anger that comes out of nowhere the second their false image is challenged. This quote from a case study by therapist Jay Reid it's just chilling, because it captures the entire war on reality in 2 sentences. A son tries to find truth by confronting his father with memories of abuse. And what does he get back? A complete denial and inversion of his reality. He is accused of being the manipulative one, the liar. This is that crazy-making confusion at its most raw and painful. When you're faced with that kind of denial, it's only human to ask yourself, what could I have done differently? How could I have said it better? This next part is maybe the most important thing for survivors to hear, because it's all about shifting the focus away from self-blame and toward real understanding. So let's just start with the most important truth of all. It was never your fault. Seriously, just let that sink in for a minute. These dynamics were set in motion long before you could ever understand them. You were a kid trying to navigate a system that was designed to use you, not to raise you. Now, to really get why it wasn't your fault, we need to understand a key difference, something expert Bill Eddy talks about. There's a big gap between a high-conflict person, someone who's difficult but might be able to adapt, and someone who is personality disordered. A personality disorder is defined by a deep, profound lack of change, a lack of self-awareness, and a lack of flexibility. They are, for all intents and purposes, stuck in their patterns. And this is so important because a lot of modern research suggests that pathological narcissism might have a strong genetic component. The wiring for it might just be innate. And this is the realization that can finally set you free. The problem was never about you not being loving enough, or good enough, or quiet enough. The disorder is deeply structural. It's a combination of potential genetic programming and developmental trauma. You were trying to solve an emotional problem, but you were really up against a structural one. You could never have loved them or behaved them into getting better. So, once you truly accept that you can't change them, the spotlight finally shifts to where it should have been all along. On you. And this is the beginning of the recovery journey, the path from being the family victim to becoming the family's truth teller. Therapist Jay Reid lays out a really powerful 3-pillar framework for this. First, you have to make sense of what happened. You arm yourself with knowledge. Second, you have to create a safe distance. That could be physical, it could be emotional, but you need space to heal. And third, you start to live in defiance of the narcissist's unspoken rules, like the rule that says you're not allowed to succeed or feel good about yourself. The ultimate goal of all of this is something therapists call self-differentiation. It sounds complicated, but it's actually pretty simple. If the whole problem was getting lost in the family's emotional chaos, then the solution is finding yourself again. It's about developing the ability to hold on to your own thoughts, your own feelings, even when you're near them, without getting sucked back into all their drama. And this path to recovery has a few key landmarks. It involves grieving, not just for the parent you wish you had, but for the authentic version of yourself you had to bury just to survive. It's about building new relationships with people who actually see you and validate your reality. It's learning to set boundaries and not feel guilty about it. But most of all, it's about rebuilding the one thing that was damaged the most, your epistemic trust, your fundamental core trust in your own ability to know what is true. Which brings us right here to the final question. The family gave you a role you didn't ask for and a story that wasn't true. But by doing this work, you've reclaimed your own story. You have become the truth teller. So the question isn't, who are they anymore? Or what did they do? The real question now is, what are you going to build with your own hard-won truth? Because that is where your new life really begins.